Don Wright is a bit of a different kind of speaker in that he has a regular day job that is set apart from the secular movement. A lot of our speakers work for different organizations, and that is what they do all day, every day. Don is actually a professional licensed engineer. He's the owner of an engineering consulting firm in Houston, Texas, and he's the author of the book, The Only Prayer I'll Ever Pray, Let My People Go. He serves as a member of the Houston Black Nonbelievers Board of Directors, and he's an active member of the Humanist of Houston, and he is also the one responsible for the National Day of Solidarity for Black Nonbelievers. Give it up for Don Wright.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm certainly excited about the opportunity to be here to speak and also to interact with the students. I certainly was delighted to get the invitation to come, so it was something I wasn't going to turn down. I want to make sure that you all know the brief significance of the Day of Solidarity. So if you like, you can take your cell phones out, find your calendar, go to January next year and type in on the fourth Sunday in February, DOS. And you'll know to remember Day of Solidarity for Black Nonbelievers. And we certainly would appreciate your support in helping us to celebrate that particular day that we have used to introduce more black people to secularism and non-belief. So you all could be an instrument to help us do that. First thing I want to do in regards to the challenges associated with organizing at black colleges, I want to share a little bit about the history of historically black colleges and universities. The federal law 20 U.S.C.S. 1061 defines historically black colleges and universities as institutions of higher education whose principal mission is the education of black Americans. Although providing higher education opportunities for blacks has been the primary goal of these institutions, they have enrolled and graduated many students regardless of their race, ethnicity, or income level. Many of these institutions were established during the mid and late 1800s. The first HBCUs, however, were founded in the pre-Civil War years. The Institute for Colored Youth, later renamed Cheyney State University, was founded in Cheyney, Pennsylvania in 1837. This was followed by Ashman Institute, now known as Lincoln University of Pennsylvania. That was established in 1854. And then Wilberforce University, here in Ohio, was established in 1856. These institutions, which were established by white philanthropists, provided religious education and limited training in basic skills to black youth. The educational success of these institutions were limited during the Civil War years because they were poorly financed and because most blacks were enslaved during that time. After the Civil War, more HBCUs were established to provide for the education of newly freed slaves, and most of these institutions were established in the southern states under the auspices of black churches, white philanthropies, and the Federal Bureau of Refugees, and also abandoned lands, which was commonly known as Freedmen's Bureau. The first HBCUs were private, nonprofit institutions. That is, they were established and funded without state government support. 2 federal laws helped to establish and finance publicly funded black colleges. The first, the National Land-Grant Colleges Act of 1862, or the first Morrill Act. This act provided land and federal dollars to the states for the establishment of colleges, and that would provide higher education to lower and middle income Americans. The first black public college established with the Morrill Act was Alcorn Agriculture and Mechanical College, later named Alcorn State University, which was founded in Lorman, Mississippi in 1871. Most of the institutions established by funds authorized under the first Morrill Act enrolled white students exclusively. But the public college education of blacks was significantly enhanced when Congress passed the second Morrill Act in 1890. This law required all states that maintained dual segregated higher education systems for white and black students to provide at least one land-grant college for blacks. And the funding used to establish and maintain the black college had to be equal to that of the white college. In the last part of the 19th century, most public and private HBCUs taught religious education and manual trades and did not grant degrees. They sought to develop social skills such as speech, dress, and etiquette. Much of the training they provided was at the basic skills level. But because most of the teachers and administrators at these institutions were white, they generally sought to teach their students code of conduct that were more acceptable to a white society. By 1927, there were 77 HBCUs with a combined enrollment of nearly 14,000 students. Today, there are 105 HBCUs across the nation. 51 have a religious affiliation. While the 105 HBCUs present, just 3% of the nation's institutions of higher learning, they graduate nearly 20% of the blacks who earn undergraduate degrees. HBCUs, because of their unique sensibility to the special needs of young black students and black minds, remain the institutions that demonstrate the most effective ability to graduate black students who are poised to be competitive in the corporate, research, academic, and governmental arenas. One of this country's great free thinkers was W.E.B. Du Bois. He graduated from an HBCU out of Fisk University in 1888. It was 5 people in his graduating class. Fisk University was founded in Nashville, Tennessee in 1866. A couple of quotes from W.E.B. Do you want Negroes educated according to their ability in order to become independent, self-directing, modern men? Or did white people intend for them to be educated only as subordinate caste? One of his other quotes about education, he says, students are not sent to school to learn to obey. They are sent there to learn to do, to think, to execute, and to be men and women. Along with W.E.B. Du Bois, I am one of those products of a black college. I graduated from Tennessee State University in 1975 in electrical engineering. And it's interesting to talk a little bit about how that took place. I'm a southern guy, grew up in a little small town in Alabama. Fayette is the name of the town. It's about 40 miles north of Tuscaloosa. Tuscaloosa is right now the center of the college football world. Roll Tide, you all know about that. But anyway, my hometown being 40 miles away, and this was during the 60s, so the civil rights movement is at its peak. And the most difficult situation was, because of forced integration, I had to go to a white school my senior year in high school. And in this process, before that transition, I had pretty much decided that I was going to college and I was going to become an engineer. But I hadn't decided on where I was going to go to school. But I was leaning heavily toward the University of Alabama. My dad and I were serious Alabama football fans, And so that was probably a good place to go. But it's interesting to even have that desire, considering that the situation with integration. Our governor, George Wallace, 1963, stands in the door of the university and says, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. So he tried his best to prevent integration, but yet and still it was going to take place anyway. So I had to make a decision. And the most difficult choice for me was led to the fact that now I'm going to a white school, my last year in college, and I never had the opportunity to really come to know or adjust to culture's lifestyle of white people. Never had any white friends. So the idea of me being kind of thrown into this culture was a little culture shock. And because of that, and the things that we were kind of exposed to, I wasn't too fond of sharing or giving up my culture to be educated in a white college. So that was a major influence in me deciding that I'm going to go to a black school. Now, that was a very important time, obviously, because now I'm moving toward a career learning about some technical skills and some knowledge that's going to carry me through the rest of my life. So that was a very important decision. So as we're talking about expanding secularism into HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, I want to emphasize how significant culture and traditions are. In my case, I felt that my culture was being taken away from me, and I didn't want to sacrifice that. But when you're looking at the situation in regarding black colleges and the way they exist today, and when you're comparing the fact that religion exists, is very steep in the black community, then I think that normally carries over into college because students are going to take their community with them. So religion in the essence of its practice is very prevalent in terms of being on college campuses for black students. But recognizing that it's based on culture and tradition is important for particularly if SSA want to be involved in expanding into black colleges, be careful. Know how to recognize that. Appreciate culture. Understand the tradition. Know where it comes from. And know how to communicate about it. So that's a very important aspect to keep in mind if you are moving into sharing secularism in black colleges. Also note that there's a large number of historically black colleges that are private, and as I provided for you, most of those schools are sponsored or affiliated with churches. So therefore, they are much deeper in terms of religion because they are basically church schools. So you have to keep that in mind. But in the idea of moving secularism into HBCUs, first thing we want to do is focus on the public schools first, the state schools, the ones that are not the ones driven by religion, or the private schools. So we know who those schools are, what those schools are, where they are, and there are many ways in which we can obtain the list and identify where those schools are. Understand and know who the gatekeepers are. And give an example. My college at Tennessee State University, we have a new president now, and she was on campus when I was there. And I had a chance to meet with her not too long ago, in Houston, and she made the statement that she felt that her position as president now was based on her calling from God. And she instituted prayer breakfasts. She meets with the churches regularly. So from that perspective, she's a gatekeeper. And so when you are trying to introduce secularism and non-belief, she might be difficult because of her influence and the kind of things that she can introduce. So the idea is for us to understand what this means and the type of people that we might run into from that perspective. Also, I would suggest that we can sponsor presentations and talks and things like that to the academic departments. Go to the philosophy departments, the African American Studies department, the sociology departments. Go to those departments and offer to come in and bring some presentations and information and talk about secularism, humanism, and those type of things. But go with the knowledge of other black people that are, from a historical perspective, that have come through this particular mindset of worldview, and there are quite a few. And I would challenge you to know who those people are and use that as a means to provide knowledge to the academic side at the college. Also, you can develop a relationship with the Student Government Association and develop some way in which you can communicate with that organization and allow that to be kind of an inroad or a connection to the student body. So the Student Government Association is kind of like a liaison between faculty and students. So that would be a good place in which you can start by doing some things for the Student Government Association on the campuses of black colleges. So that's an idea. But one of the most important things I like to suggest is go in truth. Please, go in truth. Don't go there just to put a notch on your belt that you got a black college on your list. Go there because you want to move secularism into the black community because it's better for all of us. They will be better people in a certain sense because now they have an opportunity to move into a different perspective. And you might be surprised how many of those students would just love to know that there is something different. One of the most interesting things about my journey, and that is to study and move yourself out of religion, you come to conclude that you didn't know that there was another way to believe. And you find out that you don't have to believe in a God. You can believe otherwise and conduct your life accordingly. And there are many students that would love to know that they can do something different. And they're just looking for a way and looking for other people to help them identify ways in which they can practice, think, learn in a different perspective other than being totally influenced or committed to religion. So please go in truth. Thank you very much. Any questions? Mantisa?
Thank you very much for presenting that, Donald. Do you think that it would be beneficial for the Secular Student Alliance groups to utilize the groups of color that are already existing in order to make this happen? Because there is a focus from our groups to help reach, although not exclusively, specifically people of color. So do you think that it would be worthwhile for them to work with us, those of us who facilitate these groups, in order to help establish groups on HBCU campuses?
I do, and the reason is because it would be a very simple task, and plus it's the learning curve, right? So if the more black organizations that are out there that already understand the culture, then you don't have to go through that phase. So, and plus it just gives that more sense of connection. The comfort level is going to be there. So I highly recommend that. So if they can establish a relationship with some of the black organizations that can assist in doing that, I would suggest they do that first. Yes?
So I teach at a predominantly black college, and I was wondering if you had any suggestions for either what to say or more importantly, what not to say when a student comes to me with questions about religion or God or something like that.
When a black student come to you and ask you questions?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of up to you in terms of how do you respond to white people about questions about religion. So I don't think that's something you have to identify from a race perspective or a culture in terms of how you want to handle that question. Because for me, I answer everybody the same. I mean, depending on the tone or the content of the question, but I don't phase my answer based on them being black or white. David?
Well, you talked about the gatekeepers and to be mindful of them. Are you saying that they will, if the growth is from the bottom up, if it's the students that are sort of generating this secular movement, do you anticipate that these gatekeepers will make life miserable for those students, or that they would perhaps might even do something illegal to block them?
Well, I don't think that the extent of it of them being illegal is going to be an issue or something like that. I'm just saying within within the culture, within the tradition, the way in which, for instance, with that particular with the president I'm talking about, she's telling you that she is ingrained in what God has done for her. So she's going to keep sharing that, which means that when students hear that, they are going to say, well, this God thing must be really real because look what it's done for her. And so it's not a matter of her telling you that this can't happen. It's being demonstrated indirectly in a way in which when students are hearing it, they could be influenced to not want to hear you coming in to talk about something that's anti-God.
Thank you very much.